Hello and welcome to Protecting the Investment. This video is a good starting point if you are new to the AmeriCorps grant, as I'll be providing an overview of the fiscal management requirements of the YouthBuild AmeriCorps Grant Award. The objective of this video is that you walk away with an understanding of your program's relationship with YouthBuild USA as it relates to the monitoring and technical assistance, so that you can think about how this may apply to your role at the program. The second objective is to walk away with an understanding of what we mean when we say protecting the investment. This is one of the key terms in our AmeriCorps shared language. And finally, I want to point you to some available resources to help you out with the management of the grant. In talking about this YouthBuild AmeriCorps partnership, it's important to first introduce the Corporation for National and Community Service. You may hear them referred to as CNCS or as the corporation. CNCS is a U.S. federal government agency that engages Americans in service through AmeriCorps and other service initiatives. This is a federal agency that awards YouthBuild USA with the AmeriCorps grant, and then those funds are passed through to the local YouthBuild programs. The YouthBuild AmeriCorps partnership is about providing resources in the form of member positions and operating grants to increase the reach and capacity of local YouthBuild programs. While it would be great if YouthBuild USA were granted these federal funds and could simply write a check to local YouthBuild programs, that's not the nature of this agreement. The fundamental nature of this agreement is that you perform certain activities during a certain period of time, then the federal government will reimburse you for certain costs. And when I say certain costs, I'm referring to the factors of allowability in the uniform guidance. When managing an AmeriCorps grant, it is important that you have these systems in place to properly manage federal funding. Costs are limited to the scope of the project, when the cost was incurred, and whether it is allowable under federal cost principles. So in other words, this is not money, but rather a cost reimbursement subaward. So this isn't a direct line from YouthBuild USA to your program, where we provide funds, but rather you are being brought into the circle of the YouthBuild AmeriCorps partnership. All of the terms and conditions of YouthBuild USA's federal award flow down to the program at the subrecipient level, and you can see this in the program's YouthBuild AmeriCorps subgrantee agreement. The subgrantee agreement is saying that the program plans to accomplish the purpose of the federal award and adhering to YouthBuild USA's monitoring requirements in order to mitigate the risk of disallowed costs at the subgrantee level. Key elements of this agreement include fiscal desktop monitoring of policies and documentation of expenses. And this agreement also defines the financial reporting requirements through the routine monthly monitoring process. The foundation of the AmeriCorps partnership is based on protecting the investment. In other words, knowing the terms and conditions, rules and regulations, in order to be good stewards of these federal funds and to mitigate the risk of disallowed costs. This is a shared responsibility between YouthBuild USA and AmeriCorps subgrantees. And we accomplish this through training, supporting the implementation of the grant at the program, and conducting routine monitoring here at YouthBuild USA. When it comes to the implementation of the grant, it is important to assess a program's ability to manage federal funds according to the standards of 2 CFR 200-302 on financial management, which says a program should be able to distinguish expenditures attributable to this award from expenditures not attributable to this award. To define distinguish here in a nutshell, the program should be tracking funds by source and application. An AmeriCorps program should be able to tell us what the money was used on at the expenditure level. This is typically done through a project center or cost center in the general ledger to account for a particular project like AmeriCorps. And the word attributable here is linking back to the factors of allowability that define what can be billed to the grant. And we'll have more regarding those factors of allowability in a separate video. An assessment of the program's ability to manage federal funds is conducted at the start of each grant year, and this will help set the basis for technical assistance. If your program has already been managing federal funds, it's likely that most of these policies and procedures are in place. Included in this survey, first and foremost, is to assess the program's most recent audit. It is YouthBuild USA's responsibility to make sure the program is following up on any audit findings or any other issues revealed in that process. So in this section, you will tell us whether or not you are subject to a single audit, when your next audit will be available, and finally, were there any findings in the audit? The next section on written policies, you will simply upload a copy of the following policies to the Financial Management Survey folder in your fiscal Dropbox. The next section is on funds management. So this section assesses how the program is able to identify funds by source and application. Next up is internal controls. So this section will simply highlight some of those key internal controls that absolutely must be in place in order to proceed with reimbursements. And finally, match monitoring. So as you may come to know already, match is an inherent area of risk. Ideally, your organization would have written policies in place that address all areas of concern for monitoring your match funds. This section simply allows you to explain your process in the event that written policies are not sufficient or available. Once an AmeriCorps program is enrolling members and incurring expenses, YouthBuild USA will conduct routine monthly monitoring of all expenditures billed to the grants. So the program will be required to submit AmeriCorps financial reports, as well as support documentation on a monthly basis. All of the reports and backup documentation are compiled into what we call the AmeriCorps Reimbursement Request, or ARR for short. So there are many requirements with more than one way to meet them. So our monthly monitoring process focuses just on the broad strokes. Generally, we look at areas programs struggle with the most. We don't look at every system, policy, and procedure behind every reported number. That's something an audit firm would do, and we're not exactly auditors. We're just here to protect the investment and to look at ways we can mitigate risk. So here are some of the key areas of compliance that we focus on. An effective accounting system. Itemization of each expenditure is readily identifiable to the grant. Expenditures for a grant, as recorded, must be readily and logically assignable to the approved budgets. So in other words, the headline here is, are AmeriCorps expenses easily identifiable? Next, we like to see strong federal financial management policies. Some of these policies include accounting policies and procedures, a cost allocation plan, a staff time and effort policy. So for example, how are funds allocated across different funding sources? Human resources policies and procedures, a travel policy, and staff position descriptions. So the headline here is, are internal controls in place and are costs fair and allowable? And finally, the ability to run a good financial management system. So can you produce financial reports that lead clearly back to ledgers and source documents? Do you document payroll through time and attendance records? Does the program maintain a written cost allocation procedure? And does the program segregate financial responsibilities? So the headline here is that we want to see a clear paper trail and that costs are fairly charged to the award. Programs who do not have a good financial management system or accounting system, or who lack written policies and procedures, may see a delay in ARR review, approval, and reimbursement. It may also mean discontinued allocation of funds to the program. The AmeriCorps reimbursement request is designed to monitor those areas that we routinely see programs struggle with. And the program's AmeriCorps financial manager will provide feedback and guidance if those systems or policies are lacking. So if you are completely new to the AmeriCorps grant, or if you're new to managing a federal award, you'll want to ask yourself the following key questions of your program. Can the program report expenses by source and application in the general ledger? Do we have a cost allocation plan? Can we track AmeriCorps match funds by source and application? And what are the policies for allocating staff time to the grant? And finally, I encourage you to check out the other videos included in the AmeriCorps Fiscal Crash Course for more information about allowable costs, building the AmeriCorps budget, submitting reimbursement requests, as well as an overview of the grant timeline. Of course, you can always reach out to your AmeriCorps fiscal manager or refer to the fiscal help docs for guidance.